The morning seemed ordinary enough. I was in the small Alaskan town, nestled in the shadows of the HAARP facility, a place that had become the focus of my investigation. For weeks, rumors had been swirling, whispers of strange weather patterns, sudden cold snaps in the middle of summer, and freak lightning storms on clear days. People had gone missing too, disappearing without a trace, leaving behind nothing but overturned furniture and half-eaten meals. Odd phenomena near the facility had raised more questions than answers. The locals said it was cursed. Others blamed the government. But I needed more than rumors. I needed the truth. I had arrived here 3 days ago, armed with nothing but my notebook, a voice recorder, and a determination that I hoped would keep me alive. As an investigative journalist, I thrived on mysteries, on untangling the knots that others were too scared or too distracted to unravel. And HAARP, this high-frequency active auroral research program, was one of those knots. Officially, it was a research facility, studying the ionosphere, but there were too many inconsistencies, too many strange stories. I walked the narrow, winding streets of the town, feeling the cold morning air bite at my skin. The sun barely broke through the thick gray clouds that always seemed to hang over this place. The air felt charged, like the moment before a lightning strike. I could feel it prickling against my skin, raising the hairs on my arms. I paused and looked around. Everything seemed quiet, almost too quiet. It began with a light, a strange, piercing light that cut through the thick Alaskan clouds like a knife, painting the gray sky with hues of deep red and violet. I stood in the small town square, feeling an inexplicable chill run down my spine as I gazed upward. The air was cold and still, heavy with a tension I couldn't quite place, like the moment before a storm breaks. The light grew brighter, intensifying, spreading across the sky in jagged, luminous streaks that seemed to dance and writhe as if alive. It wasn't like the auroras we were used to seeing in these parts. It was something else, something far more unsettling. It was as if the heavens themselves were splitting open, tearing at the seams. I heard a soft hum, barely audible at first, vibrating in my bones, a sound that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. The light pulsed in rhythm with the hum, each flash brighter, each sound louder, resonating deeper in my chest. I felt my heart start to pound faster and my breath caught in my throat.
What the hell is that?
Someone murmured nearby. I could hear the fear in their voice, a tremor that mirrored my own growing unease. The birds were the first to react. A massive flock of them erupted from the trees lining the edge of town, their wings flapping furiously as they took to the sky in a panic, as if fleeing from some unseen predator. They wheeled and turned in unison, their shrill cries adding to the mounting tension, their dark forms silhouetted against the strange, pulsing light. I felt a creeping dread as I watched the birds twist and turn, their movements erratic, almost desperate. They flew in tight, frenzied circles, then suddenly scattered in every direction, disappearing into the darkening horizon. I had never seen birds move like that before, as if they were trying to outrun something terrible, something unseen. Moments later, I heard the animals, dogs barking wildly, their howls filled with a primal fear. Cats hissed and spat, darting into alleyways. Horses in the nearby stables whinnied, kicking against their stalls, eyes wide and rolling with terror. Even the insects seemed to quiet, their usual buzz and hum replaced by a silence that was somehow louder, more oppressive. The hum grew louder, a low rumble that built steadily, like a distant growl, growing deeper and more intense. The ground beneath my feet trembled slightly, just a faint vibration, but enough to make me feel unsteady. I glanced around, seeing the same look of fear reflected in the faces of everyone else in the square. People were looking up, whispering, pointing, some with their hands over their mouths, their eyes wide with disbelief. And then, without warning, A massive, ear-splitting sound tore through the air, a noise like a scream from the very depths of hell. It was a shriek so high-pitched, so piercing, that it felt like it was tearing through my skull. I dropped to my knees, hands over my ears, trying to block it out. But it was everywhere, vibrating through my bones, rattling my teeth, clawing at my mind. "What is that?" I shouted, but my voice was lost in the cacophony. The light in the sky grew brighter, more blinding. I squinted against it, trying to see, to make sense of what was happening. And then I saw something, or thought I did. A shape or a shadow shifting in the brightness, moving behind the veil of light like a dark specter. It was as if the sky itself was tearing open, revealing a glimpse of something beyond. Something vast and unknowable, something that made my very soul shiver with dread. What is that?" I whispered, my breath fogging in the cold air. I couldn't look away, couldn't tear my eyes from that light. It seemed to pulse, to beat like a heart, and I felt a strange pull, a force drawing me in, compelling me to look deeper, to see what lay behind. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the light flickered and went out, the sky snapping back to its overcast gray. The hum ceased, and the world was plunged into a heavy, oppressive silence. For a moment, it was as if everything had stopped. Time, breath, the very heartbeat of the world. But then, the earth beneath my feet buckled, and the ground gave way with a deafening roar. An earthquake? Here? It seemed impossible. It was as if the earth itself had come alive, thrashing and writhing like a wounded beast. The tremor hit hard without warning, and I was thrown to the ground. The street cracked open before me, a deep fissure splitting the asphalt like a wound. I could hear the screams, the terrified cries of people running, stumbling, falling as the ground shifted and heaved beneath them. I tried to stand, but the force of the quake was too strong. Buildings around me began to sway, their foundations groaning under the strain. Windows shattered, raining glass down like a deadly hailstorm. A lamppost snapped and fell with a metallic crash, narrowly missing a group of people who scattered in every direction. The earth trembled again, harder this time, and I saw a nearby building begin to collapse, its walls crumbling like sand. The sound was deafening, a roar that filled the air, mingling with the screams and cries, the shouts of those trying to find shelter, to find safety. I felt a strange force, a compulsion guiding me, pulling me away from the collapsing structures. It was like an invisible hand steering me through the chaos. I didn't know how, but I managed to dodge falling debris, leaping over a widening chasm that had opened in the road. I stumbled to my knees, panting, a faint hum vibrating through the ground beneath me again. But this time, it felt more like a heartbeat, a low, steady thrum that seemed to come from the earth itself. And then, just as quickly as it had begun, the earthquake stopped. The ground settled, and a deep, eerie silence fell over the town. Dust hung in the air, thick and choking. I could taste it on my tongue, feel it clinging to my skin. I stood up slowly, my legs trembling, and looked around, trying to comprehend the devastation. But it wasn't just the destruction that bothered me. It was the silence, the unnatural stillness that seemed to hang in the air like a shroud. I could hear the faint crackling of fires, the distant wail of sirens, but beneath it all, there was that hum, that low, steady vibration that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. The scene before me was like something out of a nightmare. Buildings lay in ruins, their walls reduced to rubble, their roofs collapsed inward like broken shells. Smoke rose from fires that had ignited in the chaos, dark plumes curling into the sky. The air was filled with the acrid smell of burning wood, of scorched earth, of something chemical, metallic. Bodies were scattered across the ground, some moving, struggling to rise. others eerily still. Blood stained the streets, pooling in the cracks of the broken pavement. I saw a mother cradling her child, her face streaked with tears and dirt. An elderly man lay motionless, his eyes staring blankly at the sky. A dog whined nearby, limping, its fur matted with dust and blood. Animals ran wild, darting through the rubble. Deer, rabbits, stray cats and dogs, all fleeing from something unseen. Birds circled overhead, their cries sharp and panicked. I heard the distant wail of sirens, but they seemed muted, far away, almost unreal. It was like hell itself had been unleashed upon the town, a wave of destruction that had spared nothing in its path. Except for one thing. I turned my gaze toward the HARP facility, looming at the edge of town. It stood untouched, its walls unblemished, its structure whole, as if the chaos that had ravaged everything else had simply skipped over it. The stark, grey building stood against the ruined landscape like a silent sentinel, its windows dark, its doors closed, its secrets hidden. I felt a chill run down my spine as I stared at the facility, at the one building left standing in a town that lay in ruins. There was something wrong about it, something deeply unsettling. I felt the compulsion again, the force pulling me toward it, urging me to come closer to see what lay within. I took a step forward, my eyes fixed on the facility, on the answers I felt it held. The hum in the ground seemed to grow louder, a low, insistent thrum that echoed in my bones. "What are you hiding?" I whispered, more to myself than to anyone else. "What are you?" And in that moment I knew that whatever had just happened, whatever strange light had torn the sky, whatever force had shaken the earth, it had started there within those walls. I felt a rush of determination, a need to understand, to uncover the truth. I took another step toward the facility, my heart pounding in my chest, my breath coming in quick, shallow gasps. The world around me was a hellscape, a vision of destruction and death. But somehow I knew that was only the beginning, that the real nightmare, the real horror, waited for me inside that building. My thoughts raced. I needed to get closer, to see for myself. I took a step forward, but my ankle gave way, and I fell hard onto the cracked pavement. Pain shot through my leg, and I bit back a curse. I forced myself to breathe, to calm down, to think. I needed to get out of here, to regroup, to figure out my next move. But as I pushed myself up, I felt that force again, that strange compulsion pulling me toward the facility. Whatever happened, it started there. And I was going to find out why. I made my way through the devastated streets, moving slowly, carefully. The ground was still unsteady, and I had to pick my way around broken glass, splintered wood, and chunks of concrete. People were dazed, wandering in shock, their faces pale and drawn. Some were crying, others shouting, searching for loved ones. I felt a pang of guilt for not stopping to help, but I knew I couldn't. Whatever was happening here, it was bigger than any one person. I had to keep going. The hum grew louder as I approached the outskirts of town, closer to the HAARP facility. The sky seemed darker here, the clouds thicker, more oppressive. The air felt heavier, charged with some kind of static electricity that made my skin tingle. I could see the perimeter fence in the distance, topped with razor wire and guarded by cameras. The glow I'd seen earlier was gone, replaced by a strange flickering, like heat waves rising off hot asphalt. I moved closer, trying to stay out of sight, keeping to the shadows. I knew I was taking a risk. If anyone caught me this close to the facility, they'd have questions, and I wasn't ready to answer them. But I had to see for myself. I had to know what was going on. I found a spot where the fence had been damaged, a section that had buckled and twisted in the quake. I slipped through, careful not to snag my clothes on the jagged metal. The ground inside was covered with debris, broken equipment, smashed crates. a twisted metal pole that looked like it had been torn from its base. I moved quickly, keeping low, my eyes scanning for any sign of movement. The facility was eerily quiet. No guards, no alarms, no sign of life at all. Just that hum, louder now, vibrating through my bones, making my teeth ache. I could see the main building up ahead, a squat gray structure with narrow windows and a single metal door. The door was ajar, swinging slowly on its hinges. I hesitated for a moment, then moved forward, my heart pounding in my chest. I reached the door and peered inside. The hallway was dark, lit only by flickering emergency lights. The walls were cracked and the floor was covered in dust and debris. I stepped inside, my footsteps echoing in the silence. As I moved deeper into the building, the hum grew louder, more insistent. I could feel it in my chest, in my head, like a low, constant pressure. I passed empty rooms, their contents scattered and broken, papers fluttering in the faint breeze. I reached a staircase and started down, the sound growing louder with each step. And then I saw it. A door at the end of the hallway, slightly ajar, light spilling out from the crack. I moved closer, my heart racing. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The room was filled with monitors, computers, strange devices I didn't recognize. And in the center, a massive console covered in dials and switches, lights blinking in a rhythm that seemed almost alive. The hum was deafening now, a low, steady thrum that filled the room, vibrating through my bones. I stared at the console, trying to make sense of it all. And then I saw something that made my blood run cold. A screen, displaying a live feed of the town, the people, the destruction. And above it, a series of numbers, counting down. I didn't know what it meant, but I knew it wasn't good. I needed to get out of here, to warn someone, to do something. But as I turned to leave, the door slammed shut, and the lights flickered out. The hum rose to a deafening pitch, and I felt a strange pressure in my chest, a weight that seemed to press down on me from all sides. I stumbled back, my head spinning, my vision blurring, and then everything went black. When I woke up, I was lying on a thin, creaky cot in what looked like a makeshift hospital. My head throbbed and I tasted blood. I reached up and touched my forehead, wincing at the sting of a fresh cut. My fingers came away wet and red. Around me, the room was filled with the injured and the dying. The quake had left the town in shambles, and I had no idea how I had ended up here. I awoke to a dull, throbbing pain in my head and the harsh smell of antiseptic. My eyes blinked open, and I squinted against the harsh fluorescent light overhead. The ceiling swam into focus, stained tiles with cracks running through them, a single buzzing bulb hanging from a wire. I groaned and tried to sit up, but my body protested with a wave of dizziness. I lay back, breathing deeply, my mind struggling to catch up. Where was I? A makeshift hospital. That much was clear. Around me were rows of cots filled with the injured. Some people were bandaged, others moaning in pain, a few lying far too still for comfort. The quake had left its mark on everyone. I could hear the murmur of voices, the clatter of metal trays, the occasional cry for help. It smelled of blood, sweat, and fear. I closed my eyes for a moment, trying to piece together what had happened. I'd been at the HARP facility. I remembered the earthquake, the strange hum, and then nothing. Had I blacked out? How did I end up here?
Hey, you're awake!
A voice said softly. I turned my head to see a nurse with a kind face leaning over me. She had tired eyes and her hair was pulled back into a messy bun.
You've got a nasty cut on your head. You're lucky to be alive.
Where am I? I managed to croak out. My throat felt raw and my voice was barely a whisper.
Temporary hospital. The quake hit hard. We're doing what we can.
She replied, glancing around as if to make sure no one was listening.
You were found near the HARP facility. They brought you here with the rest of the injured.
I looked at her, trying to make sense of it all. My head pounded, but I pushed past the pain. I had more pressing concerns. Did anyone say what happened at HAARP? She hesitated, looking uncomfortable.
There's talk. Strange talk. People saying things they shouldn't. I don't know what to believe.
Before I could ask more, the curtain around my cot was pushed aside. A tall woman in a lab coat stepped in, her eyes sharp and assessing. Her hair was pulled back into a tight bun, and she carried herself with an air of authority.
Excuse me.
She said to the nurse.
I need a moment with this patient.
The nurse nodded quickly and slipped away, leaving me alone with the stranger.
I'm Dr. Alara Moss.
She introduced herself, her voice low, almost conspiratorial.
I work at HARP.
I narrowed my eyes, trying to read her expression. Alex, I replied, pushing myself up a bit more despite the dizziness. Why are you here? She glanced around, making sure no one was nearby.
I came to check on you. You were found near the facility after the quake. It's unusual, to say the least. Most people don't get that close.
I felt a jolt of suspicion. How do you know that? She smiled, but there was no warmth in it.
I have my sources. Let's just say I know more about HARP than most. And I think you do too, or you wouldn't have been there.
I stared at her, unsure of her intentions. What do you know about the quake? About what's really going on? Her eyes flickered with something I couldn't quite place. Fear, maybe.
There are things happening at HARP. Things that shouldn't be possible. Anomalies. I've seen evidence of it myself. The earthquake is just the beginning.
My heart pounded in my chest. You mean HARP caused it?
I think so. But it's more complicated than that. The facility's experiments, well, they go far beyond just weather control. I'm not sure how much I can say here, but there's more at stake than you realize.
Tell me, I insisted, leaning closer. I need to know. People are dying. Before she could respond, a shout erupted from outside the makeshift hospital. I turned my head sharply and saw a crowd gathering, panic spreading like wildfire. I looked back at Alara, but she was already stepping back, her face pale.
I have to go. Find me later. We need to talk, but not here. Too many ears.
With that, she slipped away, disappearing into the chaos. I cursed under my breath, frustrated, but there was no time to dwell on it. I needed to find out what was happening outside. I pushed myself off the cot, ignoring the throbbing in my head, and limped toward the commotion outside. The moment I stepped out of the tent, I felt the tension in the air. People were shouting, pointing at the sky. I followed their gaze and felt my stomach twist in fear. The clouds overhead were darkening, thickening, swirling in unnatural patterns. Lightning crackled across the sky, but there was no thunder, just an eerie, almost silent flicker of electricity. The temperature dropped sharply, and I could see my breath misting in front of me. It was summer, but the air felt like midwinter. What the hell is going on? I muttered to myself, pushing through the crowd.
It's HARP.
A woman whispered near me, her voice trembling.
They're doing this. It's all them.
The whispers grew louder, more frantic. People were terrified. I could feel it. Their fear, their confusion, and I couldn't blame them. I was scared too. The sky churned and the wind picked up, howling through the ruins of the town. I shivered, pulling my jacket tighter around me. I turned back toward the tent, planning to find Alara, but I stopped short when I overheard a conversation between two paramedics.
Another one just dropped dead. No signs, no symptoms, just gone.
The other paramedic shook her head.
That's the third today. What the hell is happening?
My heart raced. People were dying, and not just from injuries or exposure. Something else was killing them, something unseen, something that didn't make sense. I needed to know more. I moved closer, pretending to check my bandage so I could listen in.
They're saying it's radiation. But how? There wasn't any leak. No explosion. It's like the air itself is poisoned.
Radiation? I felt a cold sweat break out on my forehead. What could cause that? I needed answers, and fast. I turned on my heel and headed back toward the town, determined to find Alara. She knew something, and I had a feeling it was more than she was letting on. The town seemed to grow darker as I walked. The wind whipped at my face, and the temperature continued to drop. I could hear distant crashes, the sound of trees snapping, roofs collapsing. The weather was getting worse by the minute, and I could feel a new kind of panic setting in among the survivors. I had to find Alara, had to get some answers before things got even worse. As I approached the center of town, I saw her, standing with a small group of people near a collapsed building. She was talking quickly, her face pale, her eyes wide with fear. I pushed my way through the crowd, catching the end of her sentence.
It's not just weather, it's energy, frequencies. They're manipulating more than just the atmosphere.
I grabbed her arm, pulling her aside. You need to tell me what's going on, Alara, now. She looked around nervously, then back at me.
Not here. Too many people. Follow me.
She led me to a small alley out of sight from the crowd.
Look, HARP isn't just about weather control. They've been experimenting with frequencies, with the very fabric of reality. I don't know all the details, but I've seen enough to know they're playing with things they don't understand.
Frequencies? What do you mean?
They're trying to manipulate everything. Weather, energy, even biological processes. I've seen reports of strange deaths, like the ones happening now. People just stopping. No warning, no cause. I think it's connected to the experiments.
I felt a chill run down my spine. So, what are you saying? They're killing people? She hesitated.
Not on purpose, I think. But they're testing something, pushing boundaries, and it's having effects they didn't anticipate.
I clenched my fists, anger bubbling up. How do we stop it?
I don't know. But I think the answer is inside the facility. We have to go back.
Then we go back. Tonight. That night, the town was in chaos. The weather had grown worse. Electrical storms tearing through the sky, sudden bursts of intense heat followed by frigid cold. People were fleeing, trying to find shelter, trying to escape, but there was nowhere to go. The whole area seemed trapped in this strange, unnatural vortex. Alara and I made our way to the edge of town, sticking to the shadows. We moved quickly, avoiding the eyes of the guards who had started patrolling the streets, their faces tense and alert. We reached the perimeter of the HARP facility and found the same gap in the fence where I had slipped through before. Alara hesitated, glancing back at the town.
Are you sure about this?
We don't have a choice. People are dying, Alara. We have to find out what's going on.
Okay, let's do it.
We slipped through the gap and made our way toward the facility. The hum was louder now, almost deafening, a constant vibration that seemed to shake the ground beneath our feet. The building loomed ahead, dark and foreboding, and I felt a knot of fear in my stomach. But I pushed it down. There was no turning back now. We reached the door, and I pushed it open slowly, peering inside. The hallway was dark, but I could see the faint glow of emergency lights in the distance. We moved quietly, our footsteps echoing in the silence. I felt my heart pounding in my chest, my breath quick and shallow. As we moved deeper into the building, the air grew colder and the hum grew louder. I could feel it in my bones, in my teeth, vibrating through my skull. It was almost unbearable. Then we heard it, a faint, distant scream. We froze, listening. Another scream closer this time. I felt a chill run down my spine. What is that? Alara shook her head.
I don't know, but it's not good.
We continued forward, the screams growing louder, more frequent. I could see doors on either side of the hallway, some open, some closed. I peered into one, and my blood ran cold. Inside, I saw a figure lying on the floor, twisted and contorted in a way that defied explanation. Their face was frozen in a silent scream, their eyes wide and staring, their body covered in burns. Alara, I whispered, stepping back. What the hell is going on? She looked inside, her face going pale.
Oh my God, they're using them, testing on them.
I felt sick, my stomach turning. We have to find out what they're doing, and we have to stop it.
Let's keep moving.
We pushed on, deeper into the facility, the screams growing louder, the hum growing stronger. I could feel something building, something terrible. And I knew, without a doubt, that we were getting closer to the truth. And whatever that truth was, it was going to change everything. The wind howled like a wounded animal as Alara and I crouched in the shadows, peering through the fence at the HARP facility. The dark structure loomed before us, almost alive with a pulse that seemed to emanate from deep within. The air was charged, vibrating with that same low hum that had haunted me since the earthquake. It felt like standing on the edge of an abyss, knowing something terrible waited below.
We have to move now. The guards are changing shifts. This is our best chance.
I nodded, my heart pounding in my chest. The fear was there, gnawing at the edges of my mind, but something deeper pushed me forward, an insatiable need to know the truth. I took a deep breath and followed Alara as she led the way through the gap in the fence, moving quickly and silently across the open ground. The facility's lights flickered, casting strange shadows that danced across the ground like spectral figures. We reached the side entrance, a heavy steel door that stood slightly ajar. I could feel the hum growing louder, more intense, like a living thing that thrummed in my bones. I exchanged a glance with Alara. Her face was set in grim determination. Together, we slipped through the door and into the darkness beyond. Inside, the air was colder, thicker, filled with a strange static that seemed to cling to my skin. The corridor stretched out before us, dimly lit by flickering emergency lights. The walls were lined with strange symbols, and I couldn't shake the feeling that they were somehow watching us, that the facility itself was alive and aware of our presence. We moved cautiously, every step a calculated risk. The silence was broken only by the occasional distant scream, a sound that twisted my stomach into knots. We turned a corner, and suddenly the corridor opened into a vast chamber, filled with the remains of something or someone. My breath caught in my throat. The room was littered with bodies, twisted, deformed bodies. They were scattered across the floor, some half buried under debris, others draped over broken equipment. Their limbs were bent at impossible angles, faces frozen in expressions of agony and terror. Some were charred as if burned from the inside out, their skin cracked and blistered. Others seemed almost melted, their flesh warped and fused with the metal around them. Alara gasped beside me, her hand flying to her mouth.
Oh my God, what did they do here?
I swallowed hard, forcing myself to look, to take it all in. These people, they were experiments. HAARP was doing something to them.
But what? This isn't just weather control.
I shook my head, my mind racing. No, this is something else, something much worse. We stepped further into the chamber, moving between the bodies, careful not to touch anything. The hum was louder here, almost a roar, vibrating through the metal walls, through my bones, through my mind. I could feel it, like a presence pressing down on me, filling my head with static. Suddenly, a flicker of movement caught my eye. I turned, heart hammering, and saw a figure standing in the shadows. It was tall, impossibly tall, its limbs elongated and twisted. Its skin was pale, almost translucent, its eyes black and empty. It stared at us, unmoving, unblinking. Alara, I whispered, my voice barely more than a breath. She turned, saw the figure and froze.
What is that?
The figure took a step forward, and I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. The air around it seemed to warp and twist, like heat waves rising from hot asphalt. I could see its skin shifting, rippling, as if something was moving beneath it. We need to move, I said, grabbing her arm. Now! We backed away slowly, keeping our eyes on the creature. It watched us, its head tilting slightly as if curious, Then, without warning, it lunged forward with a speed that seemed impossible for its size. We turned and ran, my heart pounding in my chest, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The hum grew louder, almost deafening, and I felt a pressure building in my head, like my skull was about to split open. I stumbled, nearly falling, but Alara grabbed my arm and pulled me forward. We ran down the corridor, the creature's footsteps echoing behind us. We rounded a corner and slammed into a door. I pushed it open and we stumbled into another chamber, this one filled with strange pulsing lights and bizarre machinery. The door slammed shut behind us, and I heard the creature slam into it with a bone-shaking thud. "What the hell was that?" I gasped, leaning against the wall, trying to catch my breath.
I don't know, but it's not human.
"No kidding," I muttered, looking around. "Where are we?" The room was filled with strange devices. Large humming machines with wires snaking across the floor, screens displaying incomprehensible data, and strange flickering lights that seemed to move of their own accord. I moved closer to one of the screens, trying to make sense of the information. "Alara," I called. "Look at this." She joined me, her eyes scanning the data.
This doesn't make any sense. These readings, they're impossible.
I pointed to a series of numbers that seemed to be fluctuating wildly. "What do you think they mean?" She shook her head.
I don't know, but look at this.
She pointed to a section of the screen displaying a map. Only it wasn't a normal map. It showed layers, levels of reality stacked on top of each other, intersecting and overlapping in ways that defied logic. "What the hell is this?" I muttered, feeling a cold sweat break out on my forehead.
It's like
She hesitated, searching for words.
It's like they're trying to map reality itself.
We continued to explore the room, our eyes scanning the strange equipment. I could feel something gnawing at the edges of my mind, a whispering, insistent voice that I couldn't quite make out. I moved toward a desk piled with documents, flipping through the papers. My hands trembled as I read the notes written in a hurried, almost frantic script. Alara, these documents, they're talking about a simulation, a 4D simulation. She looked at me, eyes wide.
A simulation? What kind of simulation?
I shook my head, reading faster. I don't know. But it's like they're suggesting that our reality, everything we know, it's not real. It's a simulation, a construct.
That's impossible. It doesn't make any sense.
Does anything here make sense? I shot back, my voice sharper than I intended. Look at this. They're talking about layers of reality, about controlling variables, manipulating events. They've been running simulations, Alara, and it looks like we're in one of them. She stared at me, her expression a mixture of fear and disbelief.
You're saying we're not real? That we're, what, some kind of program?
I swallowed hard, my mind reeling. I don't know. But these notes, they're talking about anomalies. People who don't behave according to the simulation's parameters. People like us. Ilara's eyes widened.
You mean they know we're here?
I nodded, feeling a chill run down my spine. They've been monitoring us, and more than that, they've been manipulating us. She took a step back, her face pale.
But why? What do they want?
I shook my head, looking around the room, trying to find more clues. My eyes fell on a device on the desk, a small metallic object, glowing with a faint, pulsing light. I reached out, almost instinctively, and touched it. The moment my fingers brushed the surface, I felt a shock run through my body, a jolt of electricity that made me gasp. My vision blurred and I felt a strange sensation in my head, like something was being pulled apart, unraveled. I stumbled back, clutching my head, and the room seemed to spin around me.
Alex!
Alara shouted, grabbing my arm.
What's happening?
I don't know, I gasped, my voice strained. I touched it, and I feel different. She looked at the device, then back at me, her eyes wide with fear.
Different how?
I feel like I can see things, hear things. There's something in my mind like a signal.
A signal?
Yes, I nodded, trying to focus. I can hear it like a voice, but not a voice. It's like data, information, flowing into my mind. Alara stared at me, her face pale.
They've been enhancing you, monitoring you. You're part of the simulation's control mechanisms.
I felt a wave of nausea, my head spinning. Why? Why me?
I don't know. But I think they're using you. Using your abilities to manipulate the simulation.
My mind raced, trying to make sense of it all. So, what do we do? She hesitated, then looked at me with a fierce determination.
We need to get to the core of this facility. Find out who or what is running this and stop it before they do any more damage.
I nodded, swallowing my fear. Then let's go, before it's too late. We pushed deeper into the facility, moving quickly and quietly. The corridors seemed to twist and shift around us, like a maze that was constantly changing. I could feel the hum growing stronger, vibrating through my bones, through my mind. I could feel the signal, clearer now, like a voice whispering in my ear. Alara, I whispered. I think I can hear them. She looked at me, her eyes wide.
Hear who?
The ones controlling this, the ones running the simulation. I can hear their thoughts, their plans. They're trying to stop us.
Then we keep moving. We're not stopping now.
We reached another door, and I pushed it open, revealing a vast chamber filled with strange machinery. In the center was a massive console, covered in switches, dials, and screens displaying incomprehensible data.
This is it. This is the control room.
I moved toward the console, my mind buzzing with information. I could feel the signal pulsing in my head, guiding me, telling me what to do. I reached out and touched the console, and a surge of energy flowed through me. I could see it now, the layers of reality, the different dimensions, all stacked on top of each other, all interconnected. I could see the simulation, the way it was manipulated, controlled. I could see the anomalies, the glitches, the errors in the code. Alara, I whispered, my voice filled with wonder. I can see it. I can see everything. She looked at me, her eyes filled with fear and hope. I turned to her, a strange calm settling over me. We take control. We change the simulation from the inside. The hum that had been resonating in my bones now felt like a full-blown earthquake within me. My head pounded with the pressure of all the signals, information flooding my mind in chaotic bursts. I could barely think, let alone breathe, as the reality around us seemed to bend and twist, shadows elongating unnaturally, walls curving at impossible angles. I felt like I was standing on the edge of something vast and unfathomable, and I couldn't see the bottom. Alara, I gasped, my voice trembling, what is this place? She looked at me with a mixture of fear and determination. Her eyes darted around the room, scanning the strange symbols and devices that lined the walls, as if piecing together a puzzle in her mind.
This isn't the core, Alex. We're still just scratching the surface. HARP isn't just a facility, it's a gateway.
A gateway to what? I demanded, even though a part of me already knew the answer, felt it in my bones.
To another dimension. A dimension where the control program is based. That's where we have to go to shut it down. We've been looking at this the wrong way. HARP isn't creating these phenomena on its own, it's channeling them from somewhere else.
I stared at her, disbelief and fear wrestling for control in my mind. You're saying we have to enter another dimension to stop this?
Yes. We need to find the source. The place where this simulation is being controlled. It's the only way to end this, to take back control.
How do we get there?
There's a portal. I've seen it in the data, the readings, the energy fluctuations. It's somewhere deep within this facility. We just have to find it.
I swallowed hard, my mouth dry. The idea of stepping into another dimension, a place where the laws of reality didn't apply, terrified me to my core. But what choice did we have? If we didn't act, if we didn't stop whatever was controlling HARP, more people would die. Maybe the whole world would be consumed by this madness. Okay, I finally said, my voice steadier than I felt. Let's find it. We moved quickly, navigating the twisting hallways, descending deeper into the facility. The further we went, the stranger things became. The air grew colder, and the lights flickered with an almost sentient malevolence. I could feel the hum growing stronger, vibrating through my bones, rattling my teeth. I could feel the pull of something ahead, a gravitational force that seemed to warp reality around it. And then we found it. A large metallic door at the end of a narrow hallway, covered in strange glowing symbols. The door seemed to pulse with an eerie light, and the hum was almost deafening now, a constant thrum that seemed to echo through every cell in my body.
This is it.
Alara whispered, her hand trembling as she reached for the door. I nodded, my heart pounding in my chest. Let's do this. She pushed the door open, and we stepped through into a vast circular chamber. At the center was a large, swirling vortex of light and shadow, a portal that seemed to defy description. It was like looking into a mirror, but the reflection was distorted, twisted, a dark, rippling void that seemed to bend and warp around itself. I could feel a strange pull, a force tugging at me, drawing me closer to the portal. I could hear whispers, soft and indistinct, echoing from the other side. I glanced at Alara. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with fear, but she nodded.
On 3.
She said, gripping my hand tightly.
1, 2, 3.
We stepped forward, and the world around us shattered. The sensation was like being pulled through a needle's eye. My body compressed and stretched at the same time. I felt like I was falling, spinning, being torn apart and reassembled in an instant. The air was filled with strange, distorted sounds. Voices whispering, crying, laughing, words I couldn't understand. The light around us twisted and danced, shifting through impossible colors. And then we were through. I stumbled, nearly falling as my feet hit solid ground. I gasped, looking around, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. The world. It was wrong. Everything was wrong. Buildings floated in midair, their walls twisted into impossible shapes, stretching like elastic bands. Streets curled up into the sky, disappearing into the swirling clouds above. Time seemed to move in fits and starts, one moment racing forward, the next crawling backward. I saw people, or what looked like people, walking backward, their movements jerky and unnatural. Voices whispered from unseen corners, echoing all around us, the words unintelligible but filled with emotion, fear, anger, sadness. This is insane, I muttered, turning to Alara. She was staring around, her face pale, her eyes wide.
We're in the other realm. This is where the control program is based.
I felt a shiver run down my spine. The air was thick, heavy with an unnatural energy. I could feel it pressing down on me, making it hard to breathe, to think.
We need to find the core. That's where the control program is. If we can reach it, we can shut it down.
Lead the way. We moved cautiously through the twisted landscape, every step a challenge. The ground shifted beneath our feet, sometimes solid, sometimes feeling like we were walking on air. The buildings loomed above us, their windows dark and empty, like eyes watching our every move. Suddenly, the ground buckled and I stumbled, nearly falling into a gaping chasm that had opened before me. I grabbed Alara's arm, pulling her back just in time. The chasm closed as quickly as it had appeared, the ground knitting itself back together like a wound healing in reverse. Stay close, I whispered, my heart pounding in my chest. This place, it's alive.
I know, I can feel it too.
We continued forward, navigating the shifting landscape. The air was filled with strange sounds, distant roars, the crackling of energy, the whispers growing louder, more insistent. I could feel something watching us, something unseen, its gaze heavy and cold. Then, without warning, the air around us seemed to explode. A burst of energy, like lightning, arced across the sky, striking the ground just inches from where we stood. I felt the heat, the raw power of it, and I threw myself to the side, pulling Alara with me. We hit the ground hard, and I rolled over, my ears ringing, my vision blurred. I looked up, and my breath caught in my throat. Standing before us was a creature, something out of a nightmare. Its body was twisted, deformed, its skin a patchwork of scales and feathers, its eyes glowing with an unnatural light. It let out a low, guttural growl, and I could feel the ground tremble beneath us. "Alara, run!" I shouted, scrambling to my feet. But she didn't move. She was staring at the creature, her face pale, her eyes wide with shock.
No, it's not real. It's just a projection, a defense mechanism.
I grabbed her arm, pulling her back. Real or not, it's coming right at us. The creature lunged, moving with a speed that seemed impossible for its size. I pushed Alara out of the way, barely dodging its swipe. It roared, the sound deafening, and I felt a wave of heat wash over me. "We need to find the core," I shouted over the noise. "Now!" Alara nodded, finally snapping out of her trance.
This way.
She said, taking off at a run. I followed her, the creature hot on our heels. The landscape shifted and warped around us, the ground rising and falling like waves on a stormy sea. I could hear the whispers growing louder, more frantic, filling my head with static. We ran through the twisted streets, dodging the floating debris, the shifting ground, the flashes of energy that arced across the sky. I could feel the air growing colder, thicker, like wading through water. My breath came in ragged gasps, my muscles burning with effort. Suddenly, a bolt of energy shot from the ground, striking Alara in the side. She cried out, collapsing to the ground, her body convulsing. "Alara!" I shouted, skidding to a stop and rushing to her side. She was trembling, her face contorted in pain. I could see her skin blistering where the energy had hit, her clothes smoking.
I can't.
She gasped, her eyes fluttering. "Hang on," I whispered, gripping her hand tightly. "I'm not leaving you." I looked around, searching for any sign of help, but the landscape was shifting again, the ground splitting and reforming, the buildings stretching and warping. I could feel something moving beneath the surface, something vast and hungry. "Alara, you have to get up," I urged, panic rising in my chest. "We have to keep moving." She tried to push herself up, but her strength was fading fast. I could see the pain in her eyes, the fear.
Alex, you have to go. You have to finish this.
"No," I said firmly, my grip tightening on her hand. "I'm not leaving you behind." She shook her head, her eyes filled with tears.
You have to. It's the only way. Go, before it's too late.
I felt a surge of anger, of frustration. I can't do this without you.
Yes, you can. You're stronger than you think. Trust yourself. Trust your abilities. You can do this.
I hesitated, torn between fear and determination, but then the ground beneath us shifted again, and I knew I didn't have a choice. "Okay," I whispered, tears blurring my vision. "I'll come back for you. I promise." She nodded, her eyes closing.
Go. Go now.
I stood up, my heart heavy, and turned to face the shifting landscape ahead. I could see the core now, a distant point of light, a beacon in the chaos. I took a deep breath, steeling myself, and started to run. The ground trembled beneath me, the air crackling with energy. I could feel the simulation fighting back, trying to stop me, trying to pull me into the abyss. But I pushed forward, one step at a time, refusing to give up, refusing to let this twisted reality win. I could see the core growing closer, the light brighter, almost blinding. I could hear the whispers screaming now, a cacophony of voices, a symphony of madness. But I kept moving, kept pushing, my mind focused, my body driven by a single desperate need, to end this once and for all. As I reached the core, the ground beneath me seemed to vanish, and I found myself standing on nothing, surrounded by light and darkness, by chaos and order. I could feel the program, the control mechanism pulsing in front of me, a living thing made of data and energy. I reached out, my fingers brushing the surface, and felt a shock run through me, a jolt of electricity that filled my veins with fire. I screamed, but I didn't let go. I couldn't. This was it, the final step. I could feel the simulation pushing back, trying to eject me, trying to erase me. But I held on, pouring everything I had into the core, pushing my mind, my will, my very soul against the control that had bound us all. And then, with a final desperate push, I broke through. The world exploded in a flash of light, and I felt myself falling, spinning, tumbling through endless space. And as the darkness closed in, I heard a voice, soft and familiar, whispering in my ear, "It's not over yet, Alex. Not by a long shot." And then, there was only darkness. When I woke up, everything was dark and cold. The ground beneath me felt solid, but there was an uncomfortable sensation, as if it were subtly shifting, breathing. I blinked, my eyes adjusting slowly to the dim light. Gradually, the shapes around me came into focus, a vast, cavernous space filled with ancient machinery that hummed with a low, rhythmic pulse. Wires dangled like vines from the ceiling, and pipes snaked across the floor, carrying some unknown, glowing liquid that seemed alive. "Alara," I croaked, pushing myself up on shaky legs. My voice echoed strangely in the chamber, distorted, as if the walls were far away and also right beside me. I turned, frantically searching, and finally spotted her lying a few feet away. She was breathing, her chest rising and falling shallowly, but she looked pale and fragile, as if the energy had been drained from her. "Alara!" I rushed over, kneeling beside her. I gently shook her shoulder. Her eyes fluttered open and she looked up at me, confusion clouding her gaze.
Alex? Where are we?
I glanced around, trying to make sense of the space. I think we're in the back end of the simulation, the place where everything is controlled. Her eyes widened with realization, and she pushed herself up, wincing in pain.
The core, the control center. This is where it all comes from.
I helped her to her feet, and we began to move slowly through the labyrinthine expanse, stepping over cables, ducking under pipes. The air was thick with an acrid smell, like burning metal mixed with ozone. As we walked, the strange rhythmic hum grew louder, resonating deep in my bones. After what felt like hours, we finally came upon it. A massive, decaying machine at the heart of the chamber. It was unlike anything I had ever seen, towering over us, covered in strange symbols and alien script that seemed to writhe and twist as we looked at them. The machine appeared ancient, its metal rusted and pitted, but it was still functioning, glowing with an eerie, pulsating light.
This is it.
Alara whispered, her eyes wide with awe and fear.
This is what powers the simulation.
I stepped closer, my hand reaching out almost instinctively. The moment my fingers brushed the cold metal surface, I felt a jolt of electricity run through me, like a shock, but deeper, cutting to my core. Images flashed in my mind, fragmented visions of worlds beyond worlds, dimensions overlapping, timelines splintering and merging. I gasped, pulling my hand back. It's alive, I whispered, staring at the machine. It's more than just a computer. It's something else. Alara nodded slowly.
It's alien. Not of our world. Maybe not of any world. It's like a living organism made of code and matter. A bridge between dimensions.
I moved closer again, this time more carefully, studying the machine. "We need to shut it down," I said, feeling a surge of determination. "If this is what's controlling the simulation, then this is the source of HARP's power. We have to destroy it." Alara shook her head, her expression grim.
Alex, look at it. This thing, it's not just a machine. It's integrated with reality itself. If we try to destroy it, we could destroy everything, ourselves included.
I hesitated, fear clawing at my gut. Then what do we do? She pointed to a terminal near the base of the machine.
We need to understand how it works first. Maybe there's another way to stop it, or at least to control it.
I nodded and approached the terminal, a small console covered in buttons and switches, with a screen that flickered with alien symbols. I reached out and began to manipulate the controls, moving almost instinctively, guided by the knowledge that seemed to flow into me from the machine itself. As I worked, the symbols on the screen began to shift, to rearrange themselves into something I could understand. Data flowed before my eyes, streams of information that told a story more terrifying than anything I could have imagined. I read aloud as the symbols coalesced into coherent text. HARP, it's not human-made. It's a tool given to us by entities from another dimension. Alara's face went pale.
Entities?
I looked at her, my heart pounding. Interdimensional beings, beings of pure energy. They created this machine, this program, and they gave it to humanity to maintain control over the simulation.
But why? Why would they do that?
I scanned the data, searching for answers, for their sustenance. They feed on the energy generated by our existence, by our suffering, our struggles, our emotions. We're like batteries to them. Alara took a step back, horror etched on her face.
So, all of this, our reality, our world, it's all just lie.
I nodded slowly. For them is a source of power. They manipulate us, control us, and they've been doing it for longer than we can comprehend. I stared at the machine, my mind racing. That's why HAARP can't be destroyed. It's part of the simulation's code. If we destroy it, we destroy everything. Alara clenched her fists.
So what do we do? How do we fight something that's woven into the very fabric of our reality?
I took a deep breath, feeling a strange calm wash over me. We don't destroy it, I said softly. We control it. She frowned.
Control it? How?
I stepped back from the terminal and looked at her. The simulation, it's like a program, right? And every program has an interface, a way to access and manipulate it. If we can access that, if we can find the control interface, we can change the code. We can rewrite the rules. Her eyes widened.
You think we can rewrite reality itself?
If this machine is the core, the control center, then it should have an access point, a place where the code is open, where it can be changed. But we have to be careful. If the entities realize what we're doing...
They'll try to stop us.
Exactly. But we have to try. We have to find the access point and take control before they figure out what we're up to. We turned back to the machine, and I began to scan the data again, searching for any hint of an access point, a weak spot, something we could use. I could feel the machine's energy pulsing around me, a living force that seemed almost aware of my presence, aware of what I was trying to do. And then I saw it, a small glowing node on the screen, marked with a symbol that I instinctively knew was the access point. There, I said, pointing. That's it. That's the interface. Alara nodded, her face set with determination.
Let's go.
We approached the node, and I reached out, touching it with my hand. Instantly, I felt a surge of energy, a jolt of electricity that shot through my body, filling my mind with light and sound. I could see the code, the endless streams of data, flowing around me, through me, like a river of information. I closed my eyes, focusing, feeling the connection, the link between my mind and the machine. I could feel it probing, searching, testing my defenses. I pushed back, using every ounce of mental strength I had, every bit of knowledge I'd gained from our journey. I felt a flicker of resistance, a force pushing back against me, but I kept pushing, kept fighting. And then, suddenly, I was in. I opened my eyes, and the world around me shifted. I was no longer in the chamber, no longer standing beside Alara. I was in a vast, endless space, a void filled with light and darkness, with shapes and forms that defied description. I could feel the presence of the entities, could see them moving around me, beings of pure energy, their forms shifting and changing, their voices whispering in my mind. "Who are you?" one of them demanded, its voice like a crackling flame. I'm Alex," I replied, feeling strangely calm, "and I'm here to take control." The entities seemed to laugh, a sound that resonated through the void, shaking the very fabric of the space around me. "You think you can control us?" another voice hissed. "You are nothing, a mere glitch in the program." "I may be a glitch," I said, my voice steady, "but I'm a glitch that knows how to rewrite the code." I could feel them closing in, their energy pressing down on me, trying to force me out, to break the connection. But I held on, reaching deeper, searching for the core of the code, the place where reality could be rewritten. And then I found it, a small, glowing point of light, the very heart of the program. I reached out, my mind brushing against it, and felt a shock run through me, a jolt of pure energy that filled me with power, with knowledge. I could see it now, the code, the structure of the simulation, the rules that governed our reality. I could see how it all fit together, how it was all controlled, manipulated. And I knew in that moment that I had the power to change it. I turned to face the entities, my mind filled with a newfound clarity. "You've been controlling us for too long," I said, my voice echoing through the void. "But not anymore." I reached out, and with a single decisive thought I began to rewrite the code. The entities screamed, a sound that filled the void, shaking the very fabric of reality. But I didn't stop. I pushed forward, rewriting the rules, changing the parameters, taking control of the simulation. And then, with a final blinding flash of light, the world around me shattered. When I opened my eyes, I was back in the chamber, standing beside Alara. The machine was quiet, the hum gone, the light dimmed. I could feel the connection still there, the power still flowing through me. I had done it. I had taken control. Alara looked at me, her eyes wide with awe.
Did you do it?
I nodded, feeling a strange calm settle over me. "Yes," I said softly. "I did it. We're in control now." She smiled, a look of relief spreading across her face.
What now?
I turned to face the machine, feeling the power pulsing beneath my skin. Now, we decide what kind of reality we want to create. The chamber was eerily silent, the hum of the ancient machine now replaced by a faint crackling energy that hung in the air. I could feel the simulation's power coursing through my veins, every nerve alive with electric fire. The entities were still out there, hiding in the folds of reality, their presence like shadows flickering at the edges of my consciousness. "Alara," I said softly, turning to her. Her face was pale, her breathing shallow. She was leaning against the console, clutching her side where the unseen force had hit her. Blood soaked through her shirt, staining her fingers. She looked at me, eyes filled with pain but also fierce determination.
Alex, you have to keep going. They know you're in control now. They'll do anything to stop you.
I nodded, gripping her shoulder tightly. "I'm not leaving you," I said firmly. "We'll do this together." But even as I spoke, I could feel the presence of the entities closing in, their energy crackling through the air like static. The chamber seemed to pulse around us, the walls bending and stretching, reality itself warping under the strain. I knew they were preparing to strike, to reclaim the control I had wrested from them. I turned back to the console, my mind racing. The interface was a complex web of symbols and data, streams of code flowing across the screens like rivers of light. I could see the points of control, the nodes where the simulation's rules were defined. But every time I reached for one, it shifted, slipping away like smoke between my fingers. Damn it, I muttered, my frustration growing. I need more information. I need to understand how this thing works. Alara coughed, her face contorting in pain.
The nodes. Look at the patterns, the way they move. It's like a circuit. You have to anticipate their flow, follow the pathways.
I stared at the screen, trying to make sense of her words, and then slowly it began to click. The nodes weren't random. They were moving in patterns, cycles that repeated themselves, interlocking like gears in a machine. If I could predict their movements, I could seize control of them, turn the simulation's own rules against it. Got it, I murmured, my fingers flying over the controls. I reached out with my mind, feeling the nodes' patterns, sensing their rhythm. I could feel the entities pushing back, trying to cloud my thoughts, to disrupt my concentration. But I pushed back harder, using my newfound psychic abilities to bend the code, to twist the rules of reality. Suddenly, the air around us shimmered, and the room seemed to expand, the walls stretching away into infinity. The floor cracked and split, and from the jagged gaps rose monstrous creatures, twisted forms that seemed to be made of shadows and flame. They hissed and growled, their eyes glowing with an unnatural light, their bodies contorting in impossible shapes. "Alara, get back!" I shouted, throwing up a hand. I reached into the simulation's code, feeling the strands of reality between my fingers, and twisted. The ground buckled beneath the creatures, the floor shifting into spikes of jagged metal. The creatures shrieked as the metal pierced their bodies, but they did not stop. They kept coming, their forms melting and reshaping, adapting to the new terrain. I gritted my teeth, sweat pouring down my face. The entities were throwing everything they had at me, trying to overwhelm my control, to force me out. I could feel their power pressing down on me, trying to crush me under the weight of their will. "Alara, I need more help," I shouted, struggling to hold back the advancing horde. She was barely conscious, her eyes fluttering, but she managed to whisper.
"Alex, use the mirrors, reflect their energy."
I looked around wildly and saw what she meant. Reflective surfaces, metal panels, shards of glass, scattered across the chamber, some hanging from the ceiling, others embedded in the walls. I reached out with my mind, grasping the pieces of the environment, twisting the code, bending reality to my will. The mirrors began to float, aligning themselves around the creatures. I felt a surge of power as I manipulated the light, bending it around the room, directing it at the entities. The creatures shrieked as the light hit them, their bodies disintegrating, dissolving into shadows and smoke. But there were more of them, always more. The entities were relentless, their attacks growing fiercer, more desperate. I felt a wave of nausea, my strength waning, my connection to the simulation flickering. "Alara," I cried, turning to her, "I can't hold them off much longer." She looked at me, her face pale, her eyes filled with determination.
"You have to reach the core. It's the only way. I'll buy you time."
"What? No, I'm not leaving you here." She shook her head, a faint smile on her lips.
"You have to, Alex. There's no other way. You're the only one who can do this."
And before I could stop her, she pushed herself up, her hand gripping a piece of metal debris like a weapon.
"Go!
She shouted, her voice filled with a sudden, fierce strength. "I'll hold them off."
Just go."
I hesitated for a split second, torn between my fear and my duty. But then I saw the look in her eyes, the fierce resolve. She knew what she was doing. She was giving me a chance. "Thank you. I'll finish this. I promise." She nodded, and then she turned to face the oncoming horde, raising her makeshift weapon.
Come on.
She screamed, her voice echoing through the chamber.
Come and get me, you bastards.
I turned and ran, heading deeper into the chamber, toward the glowing point of light that marked the core of the program. The floor shifted beneath me, the walls warping and twisting, but I pushed forward, refusing to slow down. Behind me, I heard the sounds of battle. Alara's defiant shouts, the shrieks of the creatures, the clash of energy. I knew she was buying me time, giving everything she had to keep the entities at bay. But I also knew that time was running out. The core was close now, a pulsating mass of light and energy, surrounded by a swirling vortex of data and code. I could feel its power, its presence, like a living thing, a heart beating at the center of the simulation. I reached out, my hand trembling, and felt the familiar jolt of energy as my fingers brushed the surface. I was inside the code again, surrounded by streams of data, the rules of reality laid bare before me. I could feel the entities pressing down on me, their power surging, their voices screaming in my mind.
Alex,
I heard Alara's voice, faint, barely a whisper.
you have to choose.
I knew what she meant. I had two options. I could reset the simulation, return reality to its former state, wipe away everything that had happened, all the pain, all the loss. It would be easy, just a few changes to the code, and everything would be back to normal. Or I could reveal the truth. I could show humanity the reality of our existence, expose the simulation, the control, the manipulation. I could pull back the curtain, let everyone see the world for what it really was. But if I did that, I didn't know what would happen. Would people go mad? Would they rebel? Would they be able to handle the truth? I hesitated, my hand hovering over the controls, my mind racing. The entities were closing in, their voices growing louder, more insistent. I could feel their anger, their desperation, their fear. And then I heard Alara's voice again, stronger this time.
Alex, whatever you do, do it for them. Do it for the people, for the ones who have suffered, the ones who have died. Don't let them win.
I took a deep breath, my mind clearing. She was right. This wasn't about me. It was about everyone who had been trapped in this nightmare, everyone who had suffered under the control of the entities. I made my choice. With a single decisive thought, I reached into the code, my fingers flying over the controls. I could feel the entities screaming, their power surging, trying to stop me. But I didn't stop. I pushed forward, reaching deeper, rewriting the rules, changing the parameters. And then, with a final blinding flash of light, I did it. I revealed the truth. The world around me shattered, the simulation breaking apart, the code unraveling. I felt a surge of energy, a rush of power, as reality itself seemed to twist and warp. And then, for a moment, there was silence. A deep, profound silence that seemed to stretch on forever. And then, the world came back into focus. I was standing in the chamber, the machine quiet, the light dimmed. I could feel the connection still there, the power still flowing through me. I had done it. I had taken control. But I knew in that moment that nothing would ever be the same again. Alara, I whispered, turning back, tears streaming down my face. I did it. I did it for you. For all of us. But she was gone. The room was empty, save for me and the quiet hum of the ancient machine. I stood there alone, feeling the weight of my choice, the burden of the truth. I had won the battle, but at what cost? I knew the world would never be the same, but maybe, just maybe, it would be a better world. And I knew, deep down, that I had done the right thing. The moment I made my choice, I felt the simulation begin to shudder, as if it were a living organism that had just been mortally wounded. A deep rumble echoed through the chamber, and the ground beneath my feet trembled. The air seemed to vibrate with tension, charged with the energy of a reality on the verge of collapse. I watched as the screens around me began to flicker wildly, streams of code rushing across them, moving too fast to comprehend. Lights flashed in erratic patterns, and a low, ominous hum filled the air. A hum that grew louder and louder until it was all I could hear, vibrating through my bones, through my very soul. And then, with a deafening crack, reality itself seemed to split open. A blinding light filled the chamber, and I was thrown to the ground. I covered my eyes, shielding them from the unbearable brightness, feeling a force tugging at me, pulling at the fabric of my being. It was like standing at the edge of a great void, a place where time and space had no meaning, where everything that was solid was becoming fluid. I opened my eyes and the world was changing. The walls of the chamber melted away like wax under a flame, dissolving into a swirl of colors and shapes that twisted and writhed. I could see reality tearing apart, the very fabric of existence unraveling, revealing glimpses of something dark and terrible beyond. I staggered to my feet, staring in horror as the simulation began to glitch, to break apart. Buildings in the distance flickered and warped, their outlines blurring and then snapping back into focus, only to flicker again. The ground beneath me rippled like water, cracks appearing and disappearing in an instant. The sky above was no longer a sky, but a vast black void filled with writhing shapes, shadows that seemed to twist and dance, filled with a malice that sent a chill down my spine. I heard screams, distant, terrified screams, and I knew they were coming from all around the world. I could feel the shock, the fear, the dawning realization spreading like wildfire across humanity. People were seeing the truth, the reality hidden beneath the illusion they had called life. I watched as the world continued to tear itself apart. The ground cracked open, revealing a barren wasteland beneath, a landscape of dust and ash stretching out as far as the eye could see. Twisted structures rose from the ground like skeletal fingers reaching for the black sky, their surfaces warped and broken, covered in a thick layer of grime and decay. I could see people, millions of them, staggering through the streets, their faces filled with confusion and terror. Their bodies flickered and glitched, revealing glimpses of their true forms. Clusters of data points, streams of code manipulating illusory flesh. They were caught between two realities, one fading away, the other emerging with brutal clarity. The sky was a void filled with shadows and screams, a darkness that seemed to move like a living thing. I could see shapes writhing in the blackness, creatures of pure darkness, their forms constantly shifting, twisting into grotesque shapes, their eyes glowing with an eerie, malevolent light. They seemed to move with a purpose, a hunger, their eyes fixed on the world below. Everything was broken, disjointed. The air was thick with ash, and the ground was an endless expanse of dust, cracked and dry, like a desert left to die. I could see the remnants of buildings, their walls crumbling, their roofs collapsed like ancient ruins from a forgotten civilization. The roads were torn apart, twisted into impossible angles leading nowhere. People were stumbling, falling to their knees, clutching their heads as if in pain. I could hear their cries, their shouts, their desperate pleas for help, for understanding. But there was no comfort to be found, no answers to be given. The truth was there for all to see, their lives, their world, everything they had known. It had all been a lie, a construct, a simulation designed to keep them complacent, to feed the entities that had controlled them for so long. I felt a pang of guilt, of sorrow, as I watched the madness unfold. But I knew there was no turning back now. The truth had been revealed, and there was no way to put it back in the box. People were waking up, seeing reality for what it truly was, a horrifying, barren wasteland, a shattered, decaying place where creatures of pure darkness roamed freely, feeding on the fear and despair of humanity. I turned my gaze to the sky, to the writhing shapes above, and I felt a shiver run down my spine. I could see them more clearly now, beings of pure energy, their forms constantly shifting, changing like flames in a wind. I could feel their hunger, their desire, their need for sustenance. They were the entities that had created this simulation, that had fed on our emotions, our suffering, our very lives. I heard a voice, soft and distant, echoing in my mind.
This is what you wanted, isn't it? To know the truth, to see what lies beneath the surface.
I clenched my fists, feeling a surge of anger, of defiance. Yes, I whispered, my voice steady. I wanted the truth. And now everyone can see it. The voice laughed, a cold, mocking sound that sent a chill through my soul.
You think you've won? You think revealing the truth will change anything? Look around you, Alex. Look at the chaos, the madness. They can't handle it. They never could.
I looked down at the people, the confusion, the fear, the panic spreading like a virus. The voice was right. Many were breaking, collapsing under the weight of the truth, unable to comprehend the reality they had been thrust into. But I also saw something else. I saw people standing tall, refusing to give in, refusing to let the darkness consume them. I saw defiance, determination, a spark of hope that refused to be extinguished. No, I said, my voice growing stronger. You're wrong. They can handle it. We can handle it. Because now we know. Now we're free. The entities screamed, a sound that filled the void, shaking the very fabric of reality. I could feel their anger, their frustration, their fear. They had lost control, lost their grip on the simulation, and they knew it. I felt a surge of power, a sense of purpose. I reached out with my mind, touching the code, feeling the connections, the threads that bound everything together. I could see the entities influence their control, woven into every part of the simulation, every part of our reality. But I could also see the weak points, the cracks in their control, the places where their power was fading, where the truth was breaking through. I focused, reaching deeper, pushing against the entities' hold, forcing them back, pushing them out. I could feel them fighting, resisting, but I didn't stop. I kept pushing, kept fighting, using every ounce of strength I had. And then, slowly, I felt their grip begin to weaken, their control slipping away. I could see the shadows above beginning to fade, the shapes losing their form, their power diminishing. I turned to the people below, my voice ringing out across the wasteland. "Don't be afraid," I shouted. "This is our world now, our reality. We can rebuild it. We can make it better." I saw heads turning, eyes looking up at me, expressions of fear and confusion slowly giving way to hope, to determination. "We can fight back," I continued, my voice filled with conviction. "We can take control. We don't have to be slaves anymore. We can choose our own destiny." The entities screamed again, a sound of pure rage, but I didn't let them stop me. I pushed harder, reaching deeper, feeling the threads of reality, the code, bending to my will. And then, with a final powerful thought, I severed the last of their connections. The sky above exploded with light, the shadows disintegrating, the creatures of darkness dissolving into nothing. I could feel the energy, the power, rushing back into the world, filling the void, bringing life back to the barren wasteland. The ground beneath me began to shift, to change, the dust and ash swirling, reforming, transforming into rich, fertile soil. The broken buildings began to rebuild themselves, their walls straightening, their roofs repairing, the roads smoothed out, stretching into the distance, leading somewhere new, somewhere hopeful. I looked around, my heart swelling with hope, with pride. I had done it. I had taken control. I had given humanity a chance to start anew, to build a world free from the entity's influence, free from the lies and the manipulation. The people were standing, their faces filled with wonder, with awe. I could see them looking around, taking in the new reality, the new world that was unfolding before them. I knew it wouldn't be easy. I knew there would be challenges, struggles, battles to fight. But I also knew that we had a chance, a real chance to create something better, something brighter. And for the first time in a long time, I felt truly alive. I turned my gaze back to the sky, the void now filled with light, and whispered, "This is just the beginning." The world I had unveiled was spiraling into madness. The streets were filled with screams, cries, and the sounds of chaos. Sounds of a world torn apart by a truth too great, too horrifying for most to bear. I walked through cities that were neither entirely real nor fully imagined, a strange limbo between the false reality I had shattered and the raw, untamed existence I had revealed. Everywhere I looked, I saw fear, confusion, and anger. People wandered aimlessly, their faces etched with terror. Some stared blankly at the sky, as if waiting for it to crack open again, for some new horror to descend. Others moved with frantic energy, clutching their heads, muttering to themselves, their eyes wild and unfocused. Fires burned unchecked in the streets, plumes of smoke curling into the sky, adding a thick, acrid smell to the already suffocating atmosphere. I saw a woman standing on a rooftop, her face twisted in despair. She screamed into the sky, her voice raw and broken, before throwing herself off the edge. I tried to move, to reach her, but I was too late. Her body hit the ground with a sickening thud, and I heard the collective gasp of those who had witnessed it. People were breaking. They were losing themselves in the truth I had revealed, the reality they could not comprehend. Some had resorted to violence, attacking others in blind rage, blaming them for the confusion and pain they felt. I saw men and women with makeshift weapons, their clothes stained with blood, their faces masked in fury and terror. Buildings burned, their facades crumbling under the weight of the flames. I saw the fires reflected in the wide, frightened eyes of children who clung to their parents, looking for comfort in a world that seemed to have none left to offer. In the distance, I heard the sharp crack of gunfire, followed by the sound of glass shattering. The air was filled with acrid smoke and the stench of burning debris. The madness spread like a virus, infecting everything, everyone. I passed a group huddled around a burning car, their faces lit by the flames. They were chanting, praying, their voices low and desperate, their hands raised to the sky as if pleading for salvation. "Save us!" they cried. "Save us from this nightmare!" And then there were those who looked at me with something more than fear, with awe, even reverence. Some fell to their knees as I passed, their eyes wide, their expressions filled with a strange mix of hope and despair. "He is the angel," they whispered, "the one who showed us the truth." Others, though, spat at my feet, their faces twisted with hate. "Devil," they screamed, "you brought this curse upon us." I felt their words like blows, each one a reminder of what I had done. To some, I was a savior, a messiah who had freed them from the chains of the simulation, shown them the truth of their existence. To others, I was a destroyer, the one who had shattered their world, brought them face to face with a reality they could not bear. I wandered through this broken world, feeling the weight of their gazes, some filled with adoration, others with loathing, like a physical force pressing down on me. I had become a symbol, an icon of something they didn't fully understand. I could not rest. My mind was filled with visions that flickered between two realms, the false, orderly world of the simulation and the raw, chaotic truth of our existence. At times, the old world felt like a fading dream, a memory that slipped away every time I reached for it. At other times, it was the new reality that seemed unstable, shimmering like it might dissolve back into the comforting lie from which it had emerged. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw both worlds superimposed upon one another, the real and the fake, the beautiful and the terrifying. I saw the barren wasteland, the twisted structures, the black sky filled with writhing shapes. I heard the screams, the whispers, the voices of those who had died or disappeared when the truth was revealed. I felt the presence of those entities, lingering at the edges of my consciousness, angry and thwarted, but not entirely gone. And in the midst of it all, I felt Alara. Her presence was like a ghost, a faint lingering echo in my mind. She was always there, just out of reach, a reminder of the personal cost of uncovering the truth. I could almost hear her voice, feel her touch, see her smile. I could feel her watching over me, guiding me, but I also felt her pain, her sacrifice. I had saved the world, but I had lost her in the process. Was it worth it? I would ask myself, standing alone in the quiet moments of the night, gazing up at the strange, starless sky. Did I do the right thing? Her ghostly presence would whisper back, not in words but in feelings, a mix of sorrow and love, pain and understanding. She was gone, and yet she was with me always, a part of the new reality I had created. I couldn't change that. I could only move forward. Days turned into weeks, and the world began to adapt, to reshape itself. Some people embraced the challenge, determined to carve out a life for themselves in this strange, harsh landscape. They gathered in small communities, building shelters from the ruins, forging new relationships, learning how to survive in a reality that no longer played by the rules they had known. But others struggled, lost without the structure and stability of the illusion that had once been their lives. They wandered like ghosts, their eyes hollow, their minds fractured by the weight of the truth. I saw them in the shadows, muttering to themselves, their hands shaking, their faces gaunt and pale. They were adrift in a sea of uncertainty, unable to find their footing in this new world I had created. And then, one night as I lay awake, unable to sleep, I felt a presence, strong and clear, like a pulse in the fabric of reality itself. It was different from the entities I had faced before. It was calmer, more deliberate, almost curious.
Alex,
A voice whispered, deep and resonant, vibrating through my very being.
you have shown great power, great will. You have taken control where others could not. But now you face a choice.
I sat up, my heart pounding. Who are you? I demanded, my voice echoing in the stillness. What do you want?
I am what you would call a mediator. An entity beyond the ones you have faced. I exist outside of your simulation, beyond your reality. I am neither friend nor foe, merely an observer, an intercessor.
What do you want from me?
It is not what I want, Alex. It is what I offer. You see, the truth you have revealed is a hard one, painful. Many suffer because of it. And while some will rise and adapt, others will falter, fall into madness or despair. You have changed the rules, but change comes at a price.
I felt a chill run down my spine. What are you saying?
I am offering you a chance. A chance to reset the simulation once more, this time on your terms. To create a new illusion, one that you control. You could erase the suffering, the pain, give them comfort, security, happiness. You could be their shepherd, their guide, and they would know only peace.
I felt a surge of anger and confusion. You want me to create another lie? Another false world? The voice was calm, patient.
Not a lie, Alex. A choice. A world of your design, a reality shaped by your own hand. You have seen what the truth brings. Would you not consider giving them a different kind of truth? One that brings them solace rather than suffering?
I hesitated, my mind racing. The idea was tempting in a way. I could create a world where no one had to suffer, where pain and loss were things of the past, where everyone could live in peace. I could shape it as I saw fit, make it beautiful, perfect, free from the horrors I had seen. But I also knew that it would be another illusion, another construct, another way of keeping people complacent, of denying them their freedom. Even if I made it perfect, it would still be a cage, a prison built of my own design. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of the decision bearing down on me. I thought of Alara, of her sacrifice, of the hope she had given me. I thought of the people I had seen in the new reality, their eyes wide with wonder and fear, struggling to understand their place in this strange new world. What would Alara have wanted? I whispered, more to myself than to the voice.
She would want what you want, Alex. She trusted you. She believed in you. The choice is yours alone.
I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the choice before me. The mediator's offer hung in the air like a tantalizing promise, a way to undo all the pain, all the suffering, all the chaos that had spread like wildfire since I'd revealed the truth. I felt the pull, the temptation to create a new perfect world, a world where everything was as it once was, where there was peace, comfort, and order, a world where Alara would still be alive. I thought of the lies, the manipulation, the control that had defined the simulation for so long. I thought of the entities feeding off our emotions, our pain, but I also thought of the people, broken and lost, desperate for some semblance of the lives they had once known. I thought of Alara's smile, her laughter, her strength. I felt her absence like an ache in my heart that wouldn't heal. I could bring her back. I could undo her sacrifice, give her life again. I could give all of them a chance to start over, without the horrors they had faced. I closed my eyes, feeling the conflict within me, the struggle between two parts of myself, the part that wanted to honor the truth and the part that yearned for the chance to undo what had been lost, to make things right again. Yes, I whispered finally, my voice trembling with the weight of the decision. I will do it. I will make a new reality, but on my terms. The voice was silent for a moment, as if considering my choice.
Are you certain, Alex?
It asked, a note of curiosity in its tone.
To create a new world is to assume the role of its designer, its architect. You will have the power to shape it as you see fit, but you will also bear the weight of its existence. Is this the burden you choose?
I hesitated, my heart pounding. Yes, I said, more firmly this time. I choose to bear it. I will bring them back, all of them. I will give them peace, but I will also let them be free. I will let them live their lives without fear, without the manipulation of unseen forces. The presence seemed to shift, almost as if nodding in approval.
Very well, Alex. The choice is yours. Shape the world as you wish, but remember, even a new reality has its limits, its boundaries. Your creations will live and grow, and they may still surprise you.
I felt a surge of energy flow through me, filling every part of my being. I reached out with my mind, feeling the fabric of reality respond, bending and shaping to my will. I closed my eyes and imagined the world as it had been, the buildings, the streets, the faces of the people, the calm before the storm. I pictured Alara, her face bright with life, her smile that I had almost forgotten. I saw her walking, laughing, free from pain, free from fear. I felt the threads of reality weave themselves together, tighter and tighter, becoming a tapestry of my design. The broken streets healed themselves, the smoke cleared, and the fires died. The people were no longer haunted by what they had seen, by what they could not comprehend. And there she was, Alara, whole and alive, standing among them, her face filled with wonder. I felt a rush of joy, a swell of relief. I had brought her back. I had brought them all back. I opened my eyes to find myself standing in the center of a bustling town square. People were moving around me, going about their business, unaware of what had been or what could have been. The air was calm, the sky a perfect blue, the sun shining warmly down on the world I had remade. No one knew me. No one knew that I had been the one to save them from the brink, to create this new reality. They saw me only as a stranger passing by. No one whispered of angels or devils. No one pointed fingers in blame or praise. The balance had been restored. I took a deep breath, feeling the energy around me settle. I had done it. I had rewritten reality, brought everything back to the way it was meant to be. But most importantly, I had brought Alara back. I turned toward the HARP facility, that monolithic structure that seemed to anchor this world. I knew I would find her there. I felt a rush of emotion as I approached, my steps quickening. Inside, the facility was just as I remembered, sterile, cold, filled with the soft hum of hidden machinery. I followed the familiar path through the hallways, my heart pounding with anticipation. I found her in the lab, her back to me, just as I had imagined. Alara, I called softly, my voice filled with emotion I could barely contain. She turned slowly, and our eyes met. Her gaze was curious, a small smile playing at her lips, but there was no recognition there.
Do I know you?
She asked, her voice uncertain but gentle. I managed to smile. No, I replied quietly. I don't think so, but you seem familiar to me. She tilted her head, studying my face, that same spark of curiosity in her eyes.
You look familiar too.
She admitted, a soft laugh escaping her lips.
Like someone I've met, maybe in another life or another reality.
Maybe, I agreed, my voice steady. Maybe we've crossed paths somewhere before. She chuckled, a sound that filled me with both joy and a twinge of sorrow.
It's possible. Life has a funny way of bringing people together, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. She smiled warmly, and for a moment, I felt as if everything was as it should be. As if all the pain and sacrifice had led to this moment, to this chance to see her alive and well, unburdened by the past. I knew then that I had made the right choice. I had given her a new beginning, a fresh start.
Well, it was nice to meet you. Again, perhaps?
Yes, feeling a mixture of peace and longing. Again, perhaps. I turned to leave, knowing that this was goodbye and also a new beginning. I felt her eyes on me as I walked away, a lingering connection that spanned beyond time and space. She did not remember me, but I had given her back her life, her freedom. As I stepped out into the sunlight, I felt a calm settle over me, a sense of closure, of acceptance. I had rewritten reality, given everyone a second chance, including myself. And maybe, just maybe, in this new world, we would find each other again, as strangers, as friends, or perhaps as something more. For now, it was enough to know that I had the power to make things right, and that I had chosen to use it not for control, but for hope. But for now, this is the end, or maybe just the beginning.